Hello, good morning. You are watching QTV this morning. We are back again. It's Monday, a fresh start, a fresh day, and a new day as well. Wherever you're watching us from, welcome to QTV this morning. I am Ibrahim Suri Balde. And Mr. Ade, I wonder, I mentioned Ibrahim Suri Balde, but on the lower tag, Ali Jallo, doesn't write Ibrahim Suri Balde, Ibrahim Balde. Can't you read my lips, Ali? Good morning.
Good morning to you. I'm sure he can. And of course, we must remember that today is Remembrance Day.
Oh.
The 11th of the 11th. So let's not forget that. So if they had to do my full name, lower tag, it would read Adeyemi Olusegun Abiyose Darami. I think it would take up the whole screen.
Mr. Ade, that's not fair. That's not fair. That's
really,
too long. That's not fair.
I think it's best we just stick to Ade Darami.
We all have our long versions, don't we? Because I would have been Muhammad Ali Sidi Much.
Yeah, you see?
What's the point of
yes, all the emojis is cool and fine. But yeah, it's good. As I said, so let's remember Remembrance Day. In the UK yesterday, the King Charles went to the cenotaph, and heads of political parties laid wreaths. Apart from Nigel Farage, he said he was denied an opportunity to lay a wreath to the fallen. But our high commissioners would have been there as well, from all the Commonwealth countries, and ambassadors from various countries would have been there. Very, very grand occasion, carried live on national TV in the UK. I watched only about 5 minutes of it.
Of course, Ibrahim Suri Balde, you know the background, the end of the First World War, 1918.
Yes, that's right.
11th hour at 11 a.m.
Yeah, 11 a.m. on the 11th month.
11th month.
So well, it's important. In the Gambia too, something was done at the Makati Square.
And something will be done today
in Banjul, and something will be done at the Fajara War Cemetery. It's important for us to remember our fallen heroes. These people contributed a lot, at least taking Gambia's name to, another step. Being part of it.
I'm not sure about that. We were just part of an empire.
In fact, I was going to come to that.
But just being part of it, you are part of the history books.
But interestingly,
that's different from putting us on the map for
exactly,
the wrong reasons. They went there to die.
Exactly. But what I was going to come to is that yesterday in Britain, one of the newspapers, it might have been The Guardian, carried a story which I think it had something like, because these days they don't just honor the dead from the First World War. They tend to honor the dead from various wars, First World War, Second War, and other wars. But what the article said was that Britain called on people from its colonies to fight for freedom, and yet it didn't want to give those people their freedom.
Yes.
And that's the reality of it. They were saying we're fighting for freedom. Yes, fighting for Britain's freedom, not ours. Because when we came back and we asked, we want to be free, we want to be independent, it was a strict no, not going to happen. So that's the reality of the situation. But yeah.
So that's it. So the context in which you wanted to put it, it's a bit
we were
problematic.
reluctant. We were just part of the empire.
We were just part of an empire. We had no choice. No choice. But that's it, rightly so. We should remember them.
We remember them, and they should remember us. Nowadays, they give a lot more emphasis to those from the colonies who fought, because if you'd kind of lived in Britain for last 40, 50, 60 years, the only ones that they kind of gave any prominence to were the Australians, Australian and New Zealand ones, and they forgot about those from the Caribbean and those from Africa. Now, because of the noise people have made, they give us a lot more.
Well, there was this association,
servicemen.
World War veterans. Their families converge and form an association. They go on radio and start advocating. There was a special funds that the British government pay to the government of the Gambia to disburse these funds to World War veterans. As well. I think we invited them on several occasions on QTV. I'm not forgetting Ibu Janka, our I think he was the only one. Yes, the
Yeah.
oldest.
He fought in the Second World War.
Second World
in the
War.
Second World War.
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
He died.
He
not
died.
long ago.
Yes,
That's
not long
right.
ago.
Nearly 100, wasn't he?
Well, that's
Something
right.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Unbelievable longevity.
Yeah.
Yes, so I mean that is what it is. We'll start with the African proverb, and Mr. Ade will take us through.
Yes, it says, I'll read it. A great leader is an ordinary man with extraordinary wisdom. Originally, it had Magufuli's picture there. They've
Oh, really?
Oh, they changed it.
They put a map of Africa.
Yes.
Yes.
African proverb. A great leader is an ordinary man with extraordinary wisdom.
I think that's the only way that the image helps to tell us that
yes.
it's African, because
There's
no indication, it doesn't give us any clues.
Which country?
Well, I think I have the original picture, Magufuli of, is it Tanzania?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The late
Magufuli.
Yes. So, did you choose this one?
Yes.
Oh, good. Tell us why.
Why?
Well, in fact, is this not the problem today? I mean, we tend to look, we tend to look at appearance today in the world that we are living to judge people. At some point, we think leaders need to appear differently. Those who know at some point might not appear, to be extraordinary, in appearance, but extraordinary when it comes to wisdom.
A great leader.
That's what I think.
An ordinary man.
What do you think, Mr. Boy?
Extraordinary.
Yes, you just said appearances, but in appearances matter in society.
They do.
It's just the way human beings are like. But the idea that a great leader is an ordinary man, in a sense, yes, a great leader can emerge anywhere, from any background. And when you look at them, sometimes they look so short. They're not even tall, big, and and stuff like that. They're just so short. But there's something special about them. Is it wisdom? I'm not sure whether. Would I call, for instance, Hitler a great leader? He could mobilize.
Go on.
The whole country, whole nation.
Go on.
And they followed his ideology. But would I say that he had wisdom? I'm not so sure about that. The way I understand wisdom, that sense of upliftment, there's something, that's why wisdom is different from knowledge.
Well,
knowledge is just neutral, it's just there. But wisdom, there's something else that lifts you up, as it were. So, this is an interesting one. I'm not sure whether it's great wisdom. There's something you have. There's charm.
Yes.
And I do not know. But is it necessarily wisdom? I'm not sure.
It's an interesting one, and it's one that makes you think, because I think what they're getting at is that a great leader can come from ordinary or humble background and circumstances. They don't have to be born to kind of high society or whatever that is. And out of the fact that they have wisdom ends up making them a great leader, makes people follow them, and so on. I mean,
they
across
have a
Africa,
gift, humble background maybe, but there's a certain gift
that
right. They have.
That's right. And
they can make things happen.
Yeah, quite.
So I'm not sure what to call that gift.
Yeah, quite.
Well, in fact, leadership, does it come naturally? There are people, okay, fine. Like you said, they can come from a humble background, Mr. Ade, but at some point, when they talk, you listen. When they order you to do certain things, you do them because you have that confidence in them. I mean, these are qualities that not all the people have qualities.
Yeah, and sometimes you see it in places when you're not even looking for it. So I'll give an example. When I lived in Brixton and I was doing a thesis, I was doing sociology at the time. Where I lived, there was this young girl. She was about maybe 9 or 10 years old, and she was really tiny. And I observed that all the children followed her, listened to her, children much older than her, 3, 4, 5 years older than her. She was a born leader. I mean, I used to just observe them from my window. And one day I called her mother and I said, your daughter, I said, oh my God, I said, she is unbelievable. She will tell the group, don't ever speak to this person again, and they would blank that person. And if she said, not that she ever did, but you imagine that such was their blind following of her. If she said, jump from this tall building, they would have. I just found it extraordinary.
Exactly.
And, you know, they lived like across the road from me, and all the children followed her, and she was absolute. I used to I would watch them for hours on end, and she would be ordering people to do this, do that. I was like, what?
That leads us straight into the old question.
You know,
born or made?
Yeah, this is it.
Leaders. I think that's really what your question is. Are you born with it?
Well, this is
or
it.
can you learn the skills and maybe cultivate the qualities and stuff like that?
And which one is more effective? The one that is born with it or made?
It's a false binary.
Which one is more
It's a false binary.
effective?
It's a false binary.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as the one born with it. How would you know? How do you measure it?
Because
you cannot know.
You know, it's like in Africa and with monarchies where you hand over to your children. Just because you were a great king doesn't mean that your son or your daughter will make a great king or a great queen. There are people more, much better placed to be leaders, to lead that nation, whatever it is, than you, just because of an accident of birth or, just by birth. You say, oh, this person is the leader of this nation. They might be rubbish, And so you can't say, some might have inherited it and be good. Others might be rubbish. Others not born with it, not inherited it, but they just happen to be.
Well, so for me, I don't go there. How are they made? I'm not sure. Yeah. So they emerge, but what is like their distinctive features? When we talk about a great leader, apparently there are 3 elements. Some people say, 1, you have a vision. 2, you can mobilize people, you can inspire people to follow you so that you can implement that vision to have the right outcomes.
And 3?
That's the 3rd one.
Okay.
2nd, I mobilize people towards the fulfillment of a certain project.
So somebody like Mustafa Kemal Atatürk fits that perfectly.
Absolutely. That's
somebody
what it is.
like Mao Zedong perfectly. These are great leaders.
Can you move people?
Yeah.
A lot of people, they call themselves leaders. They couldn't move anybody. But you are not a leader.
But you move people without the whip.
No, absolutely. No, but if you use the whip, you're really not moving people. You're forcing them. That's a different thing. I'm talking about inspiring people.
People
That's
who
really
follow you because they buy into the vision.
Into your message.
They believe in your ideology.
Yeah.
And then there was the 3rd part, that is the virtuosity. Ability to implement that vision, then you see great things.
Look at how the modern state of Turkey came out of the Ottoman Empire.
Exactly.
Ottoman Empire had been destroyed, and they could have kind of been moping around and be miserable. But this man said, no, I will take this country and I will make it a great country. And look at Turkey.
Well, invented Turkey, modern Turkey.
The modern
essentially,
Turkey
the
was Ottoman Empire.
And over the weekend, I was watching the Turkey Superliga. Every single one of the games started with a huge portrait of Atatürk. Every single game.
Oh.
And yes, every single game. And then the players came out with a statement because they were celebrating, 101 years, I think it is.
Exactly, 101 years.
Yeah, of the founding of the modern state. So,
interesting.
A great leader with a great vision. And
absolutely.
He implemented it.
Absolutely. It's interesting, to learn, these qualities of a leader. As well. Yeah, so Mr. Ade and Mr. Mamadou Mbodj, this will lead us to a short break. Be reminded this program is sponsored by Q Money, Sunyu Kalpe, the most reliable mobile wallet in the Gambia. If you want to send money to Senegal, if you want to send money, wherever you are in this country, make sure you use Q Money. It's the most reliable mobile network. And of course, if you want to top up, those who want to buy credit, Q Power, Q Money is here for you. Yeah, so we'll take a short break. After the break, then the program continues. We'll be right back.
Toma. First time cross, really threatening, and it's dropped from Ninte, rifled in! Out.
xam nga ne ak sa Q Money wallet bi mun ngaa jënda cash power te doo si fay dara mun ngaa jënda bellu tollu si $1,000 jëfandekool ak suñu app bi wala nga dial *323# nga toppa sarta yi busal 3 pour jënda Q power soo paree nga tànn register meter soo paree nga dugal sa meter number bi dial *323# nga toppa sarta yi busal 3 pour jënda Q power busal benn pour tànn app bi nga bugg a jënda te it di nga bànneexul si free call bu la Qcell di may saay boo dugalee xaalis pour jënda Q power pour am si lu la leer koolal 133 Q Money suñu kalpe
We are back. You are watching QTV this morning. I am Ibrahim Masuri Balde. Now let's move on to the newspaper review. I mean, we have quite very interesting newspaper headline, Mr. Adedrame.
We do.
And, you know, we'll take a look at that before we take a look at some of the papers that we are having here, the physical papers.
Yes.
So let's take a look at the Fourier newspaper. Police officers sues Gambia police force claiming over $5 million.
Okay, it's 5 because it's
yes,
hidden.
It's hidden
in behind his.
Yes, $5 million. I mean,
do you know what this is
What
for?
is this?
Well, whatever it is for, you know, it's a very interesting story.
Yeah, I wonder what they did for him to sue
It
them.
will have been very important for us to delve into the story, but we'll take a look at it.
You mean somebody
Maybe in
sues
our
the
subsequent
A
program.
policeman suing the police.
Ah.
Suing Gambia police force.
Police officer.
I mean, so we'll take a look at the story. I
Yeah,
mean, because
but somebody forgot to bring the newspapers.
Yes.
I don't know who. Was it you, Mr. Wood? Otherwise, we would have been able
someone
to delve
promised
into
to get
this story.
Yeah, so all right. So I mean, well,
but it's an interesting
interesting
one,
one.
just in its, you know, just taking it in isolation. But it would be good to know what, on what grounds this person has he been dismissed? Was he sent to do something that he shouldn't have been sent to do? So it's quite intriguing. So
yeah, and the rarity of it. I
yeah,
don't think I've ever
yeah,
heard
police
any
officers
other
suing the
incident
police.
where the police.
There have been instances where people have been dismissed and they've felt it was unfair dismissal,
Yes.
and they've kind of fought the case on that. So I don't know whether this is what happened with this gentleman here, but it would be intriguing. Yeah.
Exactly. And we are seeing Magistrate Kurubali here on the front page of the Fourier newspaper, Gambia Federation for the Disabled, I mean, advocates for disability inclusive land policy.
Yeah, I mean, the Federation for the Disabled has been advocating for lots of things recently in this past week or so, some of which we've covered, saying that people with disabilities are being excluded from a variety of things, and of course, land policy. If they're excluded from everything else, then it's no surprise that they will also be advocating for something like this. So yeah, I mean, it is to be expected as to whether we can implement the laws, but you know, we could you know, bring the laws into being and sign them and validate them, but do we implement them? Is what I'm getting at.
That is really what the issue is.
It's the crux of the matter.
Which group would it be? Politicians, including, of course, National Assembly members, or whoever, sort of form a sort of crusading force, as it were, without that basic crusading force to push the issue?
Yes, is that?
Then it's going to be very slow, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Because it will follow the pace of people's norms and beliefs.
it,
And you
because
see
you're
how
going
that changes
against-
generationally. So you must have a certain force that will be pushing the agenda.
That's right.
All progress really is done through that,
This
a
is
concerted force.
So if they can get a group of National Assembly members to take up this cause on their behalf, then
possibly
it's possible that things can happen, things can change.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
until then,
no, we just follow the pace of
it's
how we are.
very slow.
And we all
Let's
know
take a
how
look
we
at
are.
this story. The autopsy results indicate that the death was not natural, and further investigative actions are required. Investigation launched into the death of ex-Senegalese finance minister.
Yeah.
Another intriguing one.
It was, they said, this is Mustafa Ba, who works very closely with his namesake, Amadou Ba. And they said, he'd been recognized for managing the country's fiscal policies. The police have launched an investigation because, as you said, they don't think it was natural causes. The autopsy revealed several elements which are likely to attest that the death was not natural.
Absolutely.
So further investigations, so they can't bury until they've done those further autopsies. But I wonder what led them to do an autopsy. Maybe somebody said, I don't think this death is natural. Because you know how we are here in kind of majority Muslim countries. Somebody dies and they've barely taken their last breath and we've buried them. So for them to do an autopsy would indicate that they must have felt something was untoward, or somebody
yes, there was suspicion.
Tipped them. There's a
something
suspicion
there
that it wasn't natural. Perhaps he'd been hale and hearty, he'd been fit, but that can happen too. I mean, I just yesterday, myself and friends on Facebook were marking the death of a friend of ours from last year. And one of them, in fact, I say friend, she's actually my cousin. And one of her friends was saying that, I can't believe that in the morning, you called me and we chatted for an hour and you wished me well. Later that evening, I heard that you died. She said, maybe you just wanted to wrap things up and this was your way of saying goodbye. She said, well, you told me you were suffering a bit from malaria, but I didn't, neither of us seemed to think that it would lead to your death, just a matter of a few hours later. So,
well, they're claiming the autopsy reveals there's several elements that were found.
Well, that's really what the issue is. Then,
well,
they need further.
Let the due process follow. Let them do what they are supposed to do. I mean, to get to the end of the issue. I mean, to see what exactly transpired, if there is foul play or not.
Because for most of our countries, the facilities for doing autopsies are very limited. We have very, very few people. In Sierra Leone, for example, for many, many years, there was a guy called Owis Cisse. He was the only one who did autopsies in the whole country. And I remember I happened to be in Sierra Leone once when a Liberian minister died, and they didn't have anybody in Liberia to do the autopsy. And Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was the president, then she asked him to come and do the autopsy because Liberia did not have a single person. So they're very rare, mainly because of kind of challenged capacity.
Absolutely. And in this case, I'm thinking, what could it possibly be? Could it be a kind of political machinations?
Well, I wonder.
Or I wonder, that's it.
Yeah,
or was it social? Had nothing to do with sort of political power, jostling and stuff like that. If it is political, you'll be like, that's an interesting element into the body politic. So all sorts of possibilities exist.
The mind can run riot. By the way, I think I call that guy Owis. He says Owis Koroma. I beg his pardon. And so we have other stories.
Yeah, so the Gambia Police Force respond to reports of alleged suicide in Brufut village.
Yeah.
The Brufut and Bruceby Anti-Crime Police responded to a report of an alleged suicide in Brufut village involving a 57-year-old Belgian national, Eric Frans T. de Luc, on Saturday, November 9, 2024.
Yeah, they said they visited the scene.
Very unfortunate.
They visited the scene and they are trying to determine what led to the apparent suicide. Normally you go somewhere, you see somebody hanging by the neck or a gunshot wound, you might think straight away, oh, this is a suicide. But of course, there are other instances where people can make something look like suicide.
That's it.
So again, it is their duty to investigate. And yeah, you never know what can lead people to. There can be all sorts of things.
Absolutely, and it's just the phrase, isn't it? Alleged suicide.
Alleged suicide.
That's it. Was
So-
he found sort of
Well, this
hanging,
is it. Yes,
for
yes.
instance?
The
maybe?
British police
So-
would use apparent suicide
Apparent, yes.
rather than alleged
Alleged,
suicide.
You know what you mean? So
Yeah.
it's a curious phrasing there.
Well, that's right.
So
And
we
then it
don't
says-
know. We
And
really
the way
have
that
no
the press
idea.
release ends, the Gambia Police Force remains committed to ensuring public safety and security of the citizenry is maintained. If somebody kills themselves,
Why do you need to say that
reassure
exactly?
the
Exactly,
public
yeah.
if it's an alleged or apparent
Absolutely.
suicide? So, yeah.
Suicide is too personal. I mean, at some point, you know,
It's personal, except for the ones that it affects, those you leave behind. It can be quite.
Really, and 57-year-old. What on earth would drive you to want to go kill yourself?
Sometimes you never know what people
You
are
just
going
never
through.
know. But yeah, we have to investigate this one and see. Really,
I've been, you know, I've said this on air many times in two separate incidents rather, where people, an hour after we were all together, committed suicide in London. One of them, sad to say, threw himself in front of a train, an express train, deliberately.
Wow.
And another threw herself from a 13th floor of a high-rise block. And yes, they were agitated about things in their lives, but nobody thought they were about to commit suicide. And we all felt guilty. Could we have done something?
And they were complaining about it. They were talking about it.
Not
Open
about
conversation.
suicide. Not about suicide.
Okay.
One of them had been arrested by the police. He was drunk. I grew up with him, and in fact I was in class with his brother, and this guy had stolen money from the bank that he worked for. He'd gone to England hoping to impress his fiancée that, look, we're now rich, we can buy a house in England. And she said, I will only marry you if you return the money.
Ooh.
And he couldn't believe it. It's like, what? What, you know? And she said, no. And she said, if we buy a house, it would be on my mind every day that this is stolen money. And of course, he wasn't prepared. So he kind of got drunk and got arrested by the police. So the next day I saw him, he was complaining about it. But that's all it was. I didn't think, oh, this guy is leaving us now, he's going to go and commit suicide. I was there when the phone call came. I happened to pick up the phone, and British Transport Police.
They break the news.
I said, British Transport Police? And then they, you know,
They break
it's
the
really
news.
shocking, really shocking. Like,
You know.
but this guy was here an hour ago, you know? Yeah. And it was deliberate. Yeah.
Wow. Things happen.
So yeah, so suicides, apparent suicide, you never know what's going through somebody's mind for them to, because it's the ultimate thing to kill yourself.
Exactly. So people are complaining about electricity, the on and off. And here the police is talking about the used transformer from the Navek Fajara booster station. Why are they stealing it? Why are they taking it?
But these are used ones, so they're not ones that were in use.
But they might be reserved.
You know,
case when
used
the
ones.
used ones. But
Like
even if they are used,
if you have a used car where you've taken the wheels off the car, it's no good as a car
Mr.
unless you
Ade,
put the wheels back.
you can keep it maybe for spare parts or something.
Well, they could have said spare parts, but they didn't say that. They said they were used one. But they've arrested people. They said 6 suspects are arrested, cautioned and detained based on their individual and collective responsibilities. That's an intriguing phrase, isn't it? They are helping the police in their investigation. So if you say their individual and collective responsibility, it could hint that it was an inside job, possibly.
Yeah.
You know, and probably that's why they've let them go. They've arrested them, but they've cautioned and detained. So in fact, they haven't let them go.
Facts are
Based on their individual and
and
collective
collective
responsibilities.
responsibilities.
What on earth does that mean?
Facts have revealed that 5 used transformers were stolen and sold to scrap metal dealers at a cost
To a
of
scrap metal dealer.
$190,000 during this period. Wow. Abna halis.
Yeah, so sold for scrap.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
You know, so yeah.
Of course, this will prompt us to ask the question, you don't have security in the booster, what happened?
Well, this is it. And
the lapses of security, or what is it? How did it happen? Insider?
Well, that's
absolutely,
right. It's an inside job, yeah.
Absolutely.
And is it also because that they were used and they weren't meant to be used again? They were scrapped, but maybe it's not their job to sell it as scrap. You know, these are the intriguing things, because as you said, they might be, as we do here, they might be cannibalized for parts to fix other things. So, as we do with cars and things. You know, you chop off one bit of a car here at the Parker, you know, go to the Parker and you'll find your spare part, you know. So,
One thing leads to another.
Yeah, so what else is in the newspapers? Lecturer says migrant workers deals manifest government's failure to create jobs. This is from the Standard. Center, right in the center of the newspaper. You can't escape it. But this is nothing new, this criticism. We heard it at the National Assembly when an assembly member got up and said, I hope the government doesn't think this is going to solve the unemployment crisis. It's not meant to. It's just meant to be another thing that helps. So what I also find remarkable is that a lecturer is saying that it is government's duty to create jobs. What's the private sector for? You know?
These things are
government's
complex.
failure to create jobs. Government, it's not their job to create jobs, apart from if you want to swell up the civil service and public service. No. That's why you have, you know, the public sector. Let the government create an enabling environment. So I'd love to go deep into what this lecturer is claiming, but I guess government they've kind of handcuffed themselves by saying they were going to create 150,000 jobs.
That's so, but for me, the whole thing, just looking at the headline, it seemed immediately reductionist. It's a very complex phenomenon. That you want to reduce it to just one thing or two things. That's what they call reductionism, one policy. It was just too reductionist. So I was like, we need to go into more details.
A lot more detail than that. So that was what you got, the one about the Belgian.
The Belgian man.
Yes, and we've got Sidi Njai saying Barrow wants to be succeeded by NPP member. Hint, hint. Okay.
Well, should he have said that? Isn't that obvious?
Well, quite.
It's his party. I mean, after he goes, he would obviously want another NPP member to succeed.
But it's an intriguing one here from The Point, which I think we could quickly, I don't know how much time we have, but it says embassy in Berlin, I'm assuming the Gambian embassy in Berlin, set to open doors for 16,000 Gambians in 2025. 16,000 Gambians. I guess that's the number that's there, because it says set to open doors for them. In other words, facilities to deal with them will be available in Berlin. Maybe just say Gambia opens its embassy in Berlin in 2025, because this kind of open doors for 16,000 Gambians.
What does it mean?
Yeah, what is it?
Could have been more specific.
I think the solution they are trying to put in place now, when you look at all this work agreement between Saudi Arabia, Spain, and now Germany is talking about it in 2025, is to...
This is an embassy.
Yes, the embassy is to reduce the rate of illegal migration, people using the back way, and dying illegally. But at some point, maybe these solutions should have come much earlier. Considering the amount of people that died, that perished at sea.
I'm not sure about that. I think with the West, be it Germany, Spain, anywhere else, the thing is politically migration is a hot issue.
Big hot potato.
It can make you lose elections. So that's why they're taking it seriously.
Not
because people are dying, not because people are dying in the Mediterranean. Not quite like that. It's just about because it is a political hot potato in the West. That's really
and I watched a documentary yesterday. It wasn't a documentary, it was a short news piece from 1996 when Halifa Sallah still had black hair, big afro.
With moustache.
Moustache, beard, quite a prominent beard. And what were they talking about? The fact that something like 40,000 Gambians had gone on this irregular or illegal route, as they refer to it. And he was saying, 1996 this was, 40,000. had gone in about a year or so. Both him and Sidi Ajata were interviewed. In fact, if anybody watches it, I'll try and download it. I don't think you'll even recognize them.
I think I watched it.
They look very, they look completely
Young.
very
in their, I think that was 30s or early 40s.
Quite. 1996 it was. So it was quite an interesting piece. But even then, they were sort of talking about the fact that that number of Gambians were migrating. Of course, then that was the reason stroke excuse. What's the reason stroke excuse now? We're not living on an authoritarian regime anymore. It has just become a thing now that we do.
It's a historical thing, isn't it? Ali Mazrui, in the brief lectures, he talked about the crisis of habitation. This was in 1979.
Yeah, quite.
Well, it's not a new thing. It's been here for a very long time.
Right.
So efforts will be done, fine, okay, to see how to tackle it. But I guess there will be, maybe there can be, solutions step by step, but won't be able to eradicate it totally.
No, that's an impossibility. Migration is part of the human condition. We migrate. I wasn't born here. I'm now living here. There are tens of thousands of people who have migrated to the Gambia, and Gambians who have migrated. That will never end. That will never end. So
but it depends where you are migrating to. I mean,
where you and how
and how you're migrating. I mean,
because if you go by irregular means,
yes, exactly.
For a lot of time you're hiding. When I went to Sweden, there were Gambians who were living there who had no papers. And they were having to duck and dive and do menial jobs that people paid them cash. And it was quite depressing to see. And some of them have been there years, 9, 10 years at the time. And this was in 2009 when I went. And I suspect that probably hasn't changed. People who come in these kind of illegal ways, irregular ways, whatever you want to call it, and having to kind of duck and dive.
The surprising thing is, you have different routes. I mean, once this
there are 100.
Once this route is closed, another route open.
Of course.
I can remember around.
So to me, this
the year
whole
2000s, 1999, 2000. They use the Sahara Desert to Spain.
Well, that's right.
And Libya. Now they have
because of the war in Libya, that became a kind of not a preferred measure. And of course, we started getting tales of people being arrested and put in jail in these countries and enslaved in these countries. So people then started to think, okay, I'm not going that way, I'll go this way. And then, of course, around the coast, Mauritania, up that way.
I mean, this is very interesting because just this discussion has sort of problematized the lecturer's point. You see how far back we were going. There was no barrow. There was, you know what I mean? There was this migration, but they're saying that no jobs. I think that perhaps this is a kind of historical phase. If you look at the longer term, because they were writing about this, the crisis of habitation since 1979. Then it was the people with brains. They were leaving. The brain drain. Really, they were all leaving. It's just now that so-called ordinary Momodu will try to get some money and go the back way. But we've been going for a very, very long time. And maybe it's a historical phase.
Well, if you take the kind of former colonies, say the British colonies, Gambia, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Ghana, people left my parents to study and come back. And then by the 70s and 80s, when almost all of us had coup d'etats, people went and never came back.
That's it. With the coups.
It started.
The Gambia, same thing. After 1994, I mean, the brain drain we had in the 90s, I think we, in the league table, I think we were fourth or something in Africa.
In fact, they mentioned that in that report.
Everybody left. And those who left never came back. The children never came back. So we are feeling that. The whole bureaucracy, our whole system is feeling that. The best talent left. So who filled in the vacuum? That's exactly what we are suffering right now.
Because I wrote an article once where I said the dreams of independence turned to dust because my parents couldn't wait to come back to Sierra Leone after they'd studied. My father was called to the bar 1959. A year later, he was on a boat back to Sierra Leone. He couldn't wait to go, and we were so excited. We have to go to this country that our parents are always talking about, But you don't get that sense now. I've spoken to many Syrian and Gambians and so on. He said, I'm never coming back.
The dynamic has changed.
It's completely changed. It's completely changed.
Exactly. Well, I mean, Mr. Mamadou Mbodj, I think we've already exhausted the time here for the newspaper review. And thank you very much for always willing to review the papers with us.
My pleasure.
Now we'll allow you to go take your coffee.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So,
much appreciated, sir.
Viewers will be right back after the short break. Be reminded this program is sponsored by Q Money, the only reliable mobile wallet in the Gambia. From the break, we will engage the mayor of KMC, Talib Ben Souda, on some of his development agenda in KMC. So stay tuned. We'll be back.
Mitoma. First time cross, really threatening, and it's dropped from Minte, rifled in! Out.
ndax xam nga ne ak sa Q Money wallet bi mun ngaa jënda cash power te doo si fay dara mun ngaa jënda bellu tollu si $1,000 jëfandekool ak suñu app bi wala nga dial *323# nga toppa sarta yi busal 3 pour jënda Q power soo paree nga tànn register meter soo paree nga dugal sa meter number bi dial *323# nga toppa sarta yi busal 3 pour jënda Q power busal benn pour tànn app bi nga bëgg a jënda te it di nga bànneexul si free call bu la Qcell di may saay boo dugalee xaalis pour jënda Q power pour am si lu la leer koolal 133 Q Money suñu kalpe
Atenong oro mobile amen keso pura andere Q mobile no yade jamano tenon kadi no webi nafitora golmo tenon mo jogi piji buyi battery on ko balde tati FM radio lampu memory card storage ko sim card ɗiɗi o ƴettata ɓura andirede dual sim dogu joni yaha ka customer care center ji amen soda oɗo mobile temeɗɗe jeego rek te a heɓay temed tati minitaji ɗi anduɗa a wowlay te non a heɓay kadi ko ɓura andirede temed tati sms te a yoɓata hay hunde ɓe sendanama ɗum e nder lebbi tati si tawiɗa faala hen ko laaɓi noddu Qcell customer care e 111 Qcell suñu boss minen udditi laawol ngol si woɓɓe jokki ɗum no yaadi e sartaji
Felenting a Q Smart and Q Smart Plus na falie hade natal seniaringol set aka wallata akata bake yenyin soto kat ko mobile tariyarim ba andum foka pare ala batterio beta ala wati janda aka ji Q Smart ye 5.9 immersive display la soto nyindu mu dalasi wuli sabanin kemenani da malati ni mobile o nyin sang iba bondulo soto la min tata for 15 GB andum kemeni muang free talk time fanam betara yele warning keme saba SMS o foka pare nyimbe mu free lati ni mobile o nyin sang walante fana ni lafta Q Smart Plus la wo fanam bijele ice screen warman bala soto minketa 6.5 inches te anin dalasi wuli nani damma isa nyi mobile o soto no andu foka pare afana nim bundle package ole nata iba 30 GB data soto la yekeme saba SMS o soto ani yekeme ni muang talk time soto nyimbe dum hani feng ita jola kana tu koma ila Q Smart ni ila Q Smart Plus soto bi kabo Qcell la isa nyi mobile o soto no bi na customer care belt o mimba nyi banko kan momo lafta kuma ko yo mo ela nyinto isa na customer care bunjulola ni 111 Qcell.
We are back. You are watching QTV this morning. I am Ibrahim Osuri Balde. We are back again, like I said before the break. When we return, we'll be talking to the mayor of KMC, Talib Ahmad Bensouda, who is our guest today on the program. And we'll be taking a look at some of the developments that he achieved during his tenure. This is Talib's second term as mayor. And of course, it will be very significant for us to engage the Honorable Mayor on our program. This is the first time. Mayor, you are welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Balde.
It's the first time having you on QTV
Absolutely.
this morning.
Absolutely.
Yes, on this morning.
On
You've
the
been
morning
here
show.
on Hell Hell.
Yes.
Okay, right,
Yes,
right.
but for this morning, this is the first time.
Yes.
And may I ask you, I'm phoning in, somebody just called me from Sweden. They said, what is KMC? They said, Balde just said KMC.
Oh,
What is KMC?
the Carnifing Municipal Council.
Yes.
Exactly. You know,
It's easy.
is Carnifing the biggest municipality in the
No, it is the second biggest.
the second biggest?
Yes.
What is the biggest in
It's
population?
it's the biggest urban
Urban
settlement.
Yes.
Yes.
Once again, Mayor, it's good to have you here.
Mhm.
I mean, to share some of your development that you achieved during your first term and the ongoing ones.
Right.
So please, can you share your major development initiative since you assume office?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and good morning to all the viewers. I think I'm asked this question almost every
On
day.
a regular basis,
On a
so you
regular
know it off.
basis, absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm guessing you're asking about my second tenure or my first tenure?
I guess
Let's take a look at the first tenure.
Yes.
Right. So let's go back to 2018,
Mhm.
May, when I took office. Our biggest job was to reform the council, because one of the things we found is that the council had no policies, there was no procedure, there was no fiscal discipline,
Right.
and basically the human resource capacity was quite low. So one of our first initiatives was to design policies that improve accountability, that ensured that we had a staff service scheme that was a guideline towards sort of the capacities we needed in different departments.
Right.
And of course to change the culture. Many know during the former regime, KMC was more of a political platform to promote the agenda of the ruling party rather than a service-driven institution.
Sure.
So basically we had to change the culture to ensure that staff knew that being a part of a municipality meant providing quality services for its residents. And therefore, we always say institutional reform has been our biggest achievement. Whoever comes into KMC and knew it very well, the first thing they notice is, wow, it's so calm, it's so serious, it's a working environment.
Right.
In the past, it was sort of, there was booze sitting everywhere, attire. There was even a live market inside KMC where they were selling meat and all these things.
Oh dear.
The second, of course, was revenue mobilization, because without resources, you could not deliver services.
Sure.
So the task was to bring in fiscal discipline on the one side, and the second was to ensure that there was tax compliance from taxpayers, because what we discovered was based on the tax base, less than 20% of residents were complying with property rates or business licenses, etc. So we had to improve enforcement, and we did that by reviving the municipal police force, by resourcing the magistrates court based inside KMC and increasing the number of police officers. And we also resourced our compliance department. So with a mixture of fiscal discipline and the improvement of revenue, I remember in 2018 May, we had an overdraft of about 9 million. By 2019 September, we had 43 million in the bank. When we also came, our revenue, I think in 2018, we came half year, but by the end of year was $120 million, somewhere around that was KMC's revenue. By the end of our term in 2023, we closed the term with $255 million as a revenue. So we were able to maximize and double the revenue base of KMC. So basically that enabled us to do ambitious projects. When we were campaigning, the top of the priority for residences.
I was going to ask you, what was your campaign?
Was waste management. You couldn't campaign and not talk about waste management, because every household was crying about waste. Every community. There was a sporadic explosion of dumps. Yes, community dumps. Communities would just identify empty homes, empty spaces, and create dumps. So it was uncountable. We were talking hundreds. So we had to clean that up, but we also had to bring in a sustainable mechanism. And this was the birth of the Mbalit project, which has been quite successful because we see repeated now by other municipalities across the country. We just saw Birkama Area Council just launched their own version last week. So the Mbalit project was an ambitious plan to ensure that there was sufficient waste collection in the municipality. And this was to ensure every household, for the first time in the history of the Gambia, could experience weekly collection of their waste. And basically, we partnered with Espas Motors, and we were able to bring about 24 compactor trucks, which has now grown to 30. Also, to fix the problem of municipal dumps, we were clearing out dumps and placing community skip bins, where the community could go deposit their waste. And we put about 20 around the municipality. And now we are even increasing the skip bin concept from just the bin to creating transfer stations. So these are waste enclosures. So we are adding 6. So we are responding to the demand. So the Mbalit project was a pre-financing scheme that lasted 3 years, and we successfully paid it off. In 2022, we had a grand ceremony where Espas was doing the official handover. And we have also grown the fleet from 24 to 30. So outside of that, of course, waste is not only collected at the household level, but it must be dumped responsibly somewhere. And thus the Bakote dump site was an open dump surrounded by...
I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to go there.
Surrounded by 3 communities. You had Bakote on one side, Manjai on the other side, Dipakunda on the other side. And it was burning sporadically for 30 years plus.
And worst of all, you had the SOS.
And the SOS Children's School is there, and the clinic as well. So it's a failure of long-term planning because the dump site should have been closed a long time ago. But over a long period, communities were allowed to grow around it. And it was an open dump. There was no fence. And children would play inside, cattle would go inside. And it even resulted to a death of a small child in 2019. And there was consistent burning because of the methane released and the human activity.
You would pass there sometimes, it would come across the whole of the road.
So it caused a lot of cancer cases inside the community, a lot of asthma cases. So after a small study, we realized the biggest problem was access control. There was no boundary that would secure the site. And then we decided that the best method was to build a fence. But we had advice. We had advice from the US.
Madison, Wisconsin.
We have a sister city. They have a county called Dane County that Madison is inside. And the county has a landfill called Yahara landfill. So upon my visit, I met the landfill engineer, John. He advised that a temporary solution would be to fence the site. So we advertised a competitive tender. We got 3 bidders. And we were able to build a 2-kilometer fence that was 5 meters high with reinforced concrete and barbed wire all over. So once we did that, we could now control activity in and out of the dump site. Then we partnered with SOS and we raised 800,000 euros from the German government. The BMZ minister of Germany actually visited. And we had improvements in the site. We developed concrete roads. We improved the water system, sanitation. We built toilets. We built recycling sheds. And with all these interventions and prudent management, the past 3 years, there's not been a single incident of fire, which the community appreciates greatly. So outside of that, we've developed 4 markets within the municipality. We've developed about 3 roads. One was a road we fully funded, was Latkumbalo Road. The others were part of a Gamworks project
Okay.
that included the Latrikunda Sabiji Market, our town hall, 90% funded by Gamworks, 10% funded by KMC. It's a project that preceded my tenure in office,
Okay.
but the funding was not available from KMC.
Right.
But because of our fiscal discipline, we were able to generate the
yeah.
funds and pay for it. And therefore, that project also developed 3 other feeder roads.
Okay.
So aside from that, we've built 7 community parks. We have delivered 10,000 bins, garbage bins, successfully to residents in our municipality. We have also developed a municipal library, which is just completed, fully resourced, and we plan to open it in 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
And that would be the first ever municipal library ever developed.
I heard that when a few weeks ago when this came up, and I was shocked. Actually. Okay.
And so these are, I guess, some of the achievements we did in our first time.
Well, I think when we ask Mayo, I mean, what are some of his achievements? I think he would be able to go on and on and on.
I can go on.
But let me ask the mayor.
You have to break me.
Let me ask the mayor for one which is outstanding. Now, since I came here, if I said to you, Mayor, how many streets are there in your municipality, and you were to tell me, I would then how many of them are named?
Right. So
I think this was a project, but it seems not to have gone.
This was a project, but it's quite expensive to execute.
Right.
It needs collaboration from the national and local level, which we are not really getting as much.
Right.
Now, our first attempt was in 2019. I invited the private sector.
Right. Because we spoke at the time.
Yes, at the time. And many CEOs came.
Yeah, right.
Because what we wanted was, we wanted to allow the private sector to be able to put their logos
on
street
the
names.
streets.
But the response was not very positive.
Right.
After the meeting, there was a lot of bureaucracy. A lot of them said they had to report back to their boards.
Right.
And there was not a lot of activity there. Then, of course, there was an initiative through Google Plus codes, where we work with the Ministry of Information. And we were able to basically put a Google Plus code on all the properties inside KMC.
Yes.
So there's about 35,000 compounds.
Yes.
That all
in fact, I went round with them.
That all
because
exactly. And so KMC partook in that exercise. Now we're actually using that code to as a resource for our Geographical Information System office.
Exactly.
We have a GIS office inside KMC.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that has all the technology now, and we can see all the parcels of plots inside the municipality, and we can know where our ratepayers are.
Well, this is it. And in fact, that's the conversation I had with a colleague who is no longer with QTV, because he was saying to me, you keep going on about this street, but this has now been solved with. I said, it's not. So I gave him this example.
Right.
I said, imagine your 6-year-old daughter is at school, and she was with her friend, and the friend says, I want to come and visit you this Sunday. Where do you live?
Exactly.
She's going to give her a Google Plus code? No, she's not.
Right.
She can say, I live at Talib Ahmed Bensouda Street, number 10.
Exactly.
Boom.
Exactly.
It's done.
Exactly.
Then I drive along, I'll see the sign.
Yeah.
This is that street.
Number, street numbers and names.
The street names.
Exactly.
And open it to the public to come up with names.
Right.
For, somebody once suggested that one good thing would be in certain streets, know the person who built the first house there.
But we have them
Name
in
it after that
Canifing
person.
Estate, I think.
No, that's within
so
estates.
what he's basically saying, the Google Plus code is a serial number. And so I think it's about 8 or 9 numbers.
It's about 9.
9 numbers.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
basically, nobody could remember that. And you ask me, what is it? Where can I go? And I start telling you 3, 4, 8, 9.
Start counting.
So basically, what's easiest is if you say Mr. Balde Street, house number 3.
Yeah, correct.
And then you would go to the neighborhood.
That's
you
right.
will see Mr. Balde signboard,
Yeah,
and then you see number 3.
That would be easier.
Right. So basically, that's how it was done for a lot of decades, although the world is changing.
You go into Banjul, that's why all those streets have names.
So the world is changing rapidly now. People are sending live locations.
In fact, yes.
So you need a smartphone.
Yes, to get it.
If I have a simple phone,
you can. Yeah, so Mayor, what are some of the infrastructure development initiatives that you think will transform KMC in the next 5 years?
So basically now we are focusing all our resources on infrastructure development. So after our first term, we saw the 3 top priorities had changed from waste management, water, electricity and roads to now water, electricity and roads.
Okay.
Because for the most part, people in KMC have felt that waste management has improved. It's no longer the major concern. We did the statistics that before we came into office, waste collected in the municipality was 4%.
Right.
After our Malit initiative, it's risen to 70%.
Whoa.
So it's a big improvement.
Huge.
And even malaria cases went down as a result of it.
Right.
Now people are complaining that they want electricity, water, and road infrastructure. But I believe water comes first, then stable electricity, and then road infrastructure. So basically water and electricity are the mandate of NAWEC, so we don't have a lot of say in that. So we said, okay, we know NRA makes roads, OIC is developing roads. We can also play our part, right? So I believe OIC said 50 kilometers within the greater Banjul area. About 30 of them is within KMC.
Sure.
The NRA also does develop roads here and there. So we also want to play our part based on our resource.
Sure.
So now that the Mbalit had phased out, we created a project called the KMRNP, Kanifing Municipal Road Network Project. KMRNP. And basically we identified 15.4 kilometers of roads within our municipality. I believe the number of roads is more than 15. Where we had consultation with our councillors and WDCs, which is the Ward Development Committee, which the Alcalo is a part of, elders of the community are part of. They identify roads they believed are strategic and would improve community access. So based on how many roads we counted, I believe we counted more than 30 roads. But we had budget constraints. Those 30 roads would cost $1.6 billion a year. So we said, well, we don't have that resource. But what we can do, we can project our income in the next 5 years and develop a resource, a package. And based on that package, we can identify priority roads and work with that. So we were able to free up $300 million a year that we could pay off over the next 5 years. So based on that projection, we now identified what are the priority roads out of these 30. We identified at least 12, I think 12 to 15. And then we also said, Bakau is a community that's suffering from collapsed drains and drains that have now turned into sewage systems. Because of Bakau is an old town and there's a lot of community living. A lot of Kabilos, we have large families, the nuclear the extended families living together. And basically to develop soccerways inside their houses became a problem. So a lot of them were taking a shortcut and said, oh, I will just connect my drain, my house gutter to the drain outside. And then that also causes health issues. So we said, well, this is a priority. So we will not only build 15.4 kilometers of road, but we will basically rebuild all the drains in Bakau, which is 4.9 kilometers worth of drains. So we launched this project, I think in June, if I'm not forgotten. Is either June or May. And we contracted it. We, of course, did a competitive tender. A company one called Longian Road and Bridge Company. And basically now we paid them the initial 20 million out of the 300, and that is for them to mobilize their resources, the equipment, the personnel, the manpower, the office, etc. And they have started clearing our Bakau drains. I think they've cleared all the rubbish from it. So in January, when the next payment comes, we should see the beginning of the construction process. So we project 3 years' time. Most of the 90% of the work should be done, if not 100%. We're receiving a lot of community calls. They're very impatient. Since we launched, how come the roads are not started? But it takes time. If you remember, when OIC was announced and when the roads actually came, it's maybe 5 years plus. Right? So these things take time, but we don't intend to go past 3 years as far as the development is concerned. So by 2027, when I'm leaving office, we hope that all the roads will be done.
So you've mentioned leaving office. So if you were to leave office 2027 and you looked back, what would you like to have achieved through your tenure?
Right, so my tenure ends 2027 May. Before I went to the Supreme Court, I would have ended 2028 May, but one of the cases I fought for was the access, mayor's tenure should be 4 years. But we were, by default, doing 5 years, extended terms.
Mm-hmm.
And this is because the electoral act says that when there's a conflict between elections, they will move the local government elections by 1 year.
Yeah.
But that's unconstitutional because our act says 4 years. So we won that case, meaning now it's fixed. 2027 May, I have to leave office. So basically what I would have felt that I have achieved, number one, would be institutional reform. That KMC is now a serious service-driven organization. Of course, the demands of the public is waste management, also our road infrastructure. I would have liked to see big improvements. You can never fix waste management, but you can improve them.
Of course.
Even in developed countries, they are still struggling with waste management. It is a problem.
Well, I think when you know Talib, I mean, in fact, before he became a mayor, I mean, waste management is something. I follow him on Facebook and a lot of social media during that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
because it's directly linked with your health, and your health is directly linked with your quality of life. So we see it's a struggle for all communities across the world. You just have to keep evolving. So in the waste management aspect, I would like to see that the greater Banjul area has a landfill, a proper engineered landfill.
Right.
Because one of the things we are not talking about is that the Bakote dump site and other dump sites like Tambana are poisoning the water table with leachage. So everybody who lives around Bakote dump site, 5 to 10 kilometers, if they dig a well, they might be drinking contaminated water. Right, because an engineered landfill means there's a membrane that is put under, and it doesn't allow for leachage, which is basically the chemicals and methane and other things that are basically that have deteriorated from the waste and going into the water table. So another thing, of course, I would like to see that the municipality has at the minimum a basic transportation system. What we see around the world is cities have transportation companies. If you go to London, you have Transport for London, which is TfL. If you go to Toronto, you have the TTC, which is the Toronto Transport Corporation. So we have KMT. So we have formed the company in principle. We have a board of directors, but we would like at the minimum to be operational, even if it's one bus. Because the intention there is that Mayor Bensouda will leave. Maybe Mayor Balde will come. Right? So Mayor Balde will not have to start a transport company from scratch. He will try now, instead of just having buses, can he have trams? If Mayor Balde leaves, another mayor comes, then they say, can they have a rail? Right. So we would definitely want to get that started. So I think for me, the infrastructure, the waste, and the urban transport is the three things I would have loved to achieve.
Affordable housing. It's also very significant.
Absolutely. So we have core plans. So our core plan is infrastructure, waste management, and the urban transport. And of course, institutional reform is just general. But the things we want, so those are the things we need. But the things we want is, we would also love to see that there's some initiative done in affordable housing. We would also want initiatives in municipal market development to expand our markets. Because Gambia is largely underemployed or self-employed. Many people are working and having business on the side, or they're just relying on their petty trade. And therefore they need markets. So that now we have cleared the road operation, a lot of people don't have where to sell. So these markets are very important. Now the affordable housing is extremely important. I know those even working here, a lot of them are renting, right? And those listening, a lot of them are renters. I think majority of people in KMC now are renters, a good number. And we see that because there's an increasing demand for housing, because the population is growing, the supply is not catching up, especially affordable housing. Now, all the housing we see coming up are beachfront luxury apartments, but there's no affordable housing initiative.
Exactly.
So that puts pressure on rent, because wherever demand is more than supply, price goes up.
Absolutely.
Right. So now rent is increasing every day. So a lot of people are being priced out of the market. Thank God that Gambia has tight-knit communities that help each other. If not, a lot of people would be homeless, like many cities around the world. They'll be sleeping on the street. So government not just councils, but the government must partner with local authorities to create the corresponding supply.
Sure. Do we have the space for it?
We do have the space if we build up.
Within.
So, for example, Canifing has 73 kilometers square of land, or 75 kilometers square.
Right.
It's the second smallest municipality in terms of land mass, but the second biggest in terms of population, and it's all urbanized. So meaning our population density is highest in the Gambia.
That's it, yeah.
So we have 5,000 people per kilometer square. But Paris is 100 kilometers square, city of Paris. I just came from Paris. So they're 25% bigger than KMC landmass, but they have a population of 2-point-something million people. This is the city of Paris, not the greater Paris area, but the city of Paris. They have 2 million plus people. So they have 20,000 people per kilometer square. Why can they fit more people? And it's not noticeable because they build up.
Yes.
So the problem with KMC is too many compounds, too many bungalows. So KMC, a long-term plan is that we must have higher buildings, high rises, similar to Dakar. So instead of one compound house, just one floor, it should have 5 to 7. Because the way even Paris is zoned, you cannot build more than 7 floors.
Okay.
Yeah, so we could have, let's say, 5-floor limit or 6-floor limit.
But that 7th floor is for residential. For commercial, I think you can build.
No, the
Paris.
Entire city zone.
Okay, right.
I think the entire city zone, I think they've only allowed...
Okay, you're talking about
inside the heart.
The heart of
So
Paris,
all the skyscrapers are outside of Paris.
Outside, yeah. Sure.
Just out the outskirts. So basically, KMC should be able to have, as an urban center, 5 floors limit. And that should be encouraged through, of course, cheap finance. So the banking system should have lower interest that also encourage people to take loans and make these developments. So you can even buy out few compounds as a developer,
and build up.
Government can give incentives so you can have high rises. So in this way, we will reduce the population. We can increase the population with even the same amount of land, and the housing pressure would be reduced.
Yeah, so I mean, let's move on to another significant thing. When you invite Mayor Talib Bensouda on platforms, you know, people send messages. Facebook is hot. The YouTube channel is hot. You seem to earn the trust of many Gambians. Talib, do you intend to be president?
Well, look, I cannot say I intend to be president, but I can say that if given the opportunity, in the right circumstances, surely I will go for it. A politician, just like any person, wants to have a bigger platform to do more. I'm sure all of you have your individual ambitions in journalism and media, and it's always to have a bigger platform so you can send out your message. My intent for getting into politics in the first place was to leave a good legacy through impacting my fellow countrymen and being proud of the Gambia. As not just a poor country, but a significant player on the world stage. And the way to do that is to ensure that the population is well off, to have a high quality population living a high quality life, highly educated, with a lot of human capacity, and that would make the Gambia an important country in the world. So basically, if given the opportunity in the right circumstance, is not something I would...
What is the right circumstance?
Well, first of all, I would say timing is very important. I am already serving a mandate which I should focus on. It would be unfair to be given a mandate by the people of KMC and be focusing on higher office, because they've given me a mandate to serve them. If I wanted to go for higher office, the right thing was to basically not rerun, allow somebody who wants to focus on KMC. But right now, my focus should be solely on how to ensure that I deliver on my promises and on my campaign plan. So that's one circumstance. Another circumstance is I do belong to a party, and the party has a leader right now, and a leader who's not a normal party leader. He's basically the soul of the party. So we must know first what is his intention and what is his next step. And if that next step is that he wants to run, then definitely I certainly will not challenge him. So basically that's a second set of circumstance. A third set of circumstance is that everything is based on timing. Today, people might say, oh, it's Talib. Tomorrow they might say different, right? So if I felt at the time where the opportunity presented itself that people still want me and they demand me and then the opportunity was there, surely I will not shy away from it.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your
I
question.
think that's clear.
Thank you for that.
It's well put. And Mr. Ade, I think we almost exhausted
We've
the time.
almost exhausted. I wanted to ask you whether they have
quickly.
this thing called 15-minute cities where every amenity is within 15 minutes or so of people's, schools, clinics, and so on and so on. I mean, have you ever thought of something like that where you have kind of micro kind of areas of KMC where every amenity is within people's easy reach, whether it's markets, shops, clinics, schools?
I love that question because that's one of the fundamental things that is needed for quality life.
Yeah, quite.
If within 15 minutes you can get to an amenity.
Yeah, right.
Now, Gambia needs to be properly planned. The unfortunate part is, unlike other cities around the world, cities in Gambia or municipalities don't have planning powers.
Right.
This is why we keep advocating for decentralization.
Right.
So even I came from France, they have a Ministry of Regional and Territorial Government and Decentralization.
Right.
Sorry, it's a department, it's not even a ministry. It's a department under the Ministry of Interior. So with that power to do urban planning, you can zone, you can look at the quantity of people in every community and the corresponding amenities they should have.
Yes.
So any functioning city you go to, one thing you notice, the amount of parks. Every community has a community park.
It's something
every community has a football field, a basketball court, has a community swimming pool, has a community center where they can go for basic training. And then not just for youths, but even for adults. Right? So there must be a health center, medical clinic. So I hope Gambia gets to that point, and I think we will eventually. But I think it's integral to the improvement in our quality of life. I believe if we had that, the levels of people leaving the country for a better life would reduce dramatically.
I've said it many times. I've said it many times.
Absolutely. I think it needs to be organized in such a way. We've also seen the KMC radio.
Yeah, so somebody asked me this morning and said, make sure when you go to QTV, you talk about how we still don't have a license.
Oh,
yeah,
you don't have a license.
We still don't have a license. It's been running now for, I think, 1 year plus.
Yeah, quite.
We have all the equipment. We have the personnel. We have the content. We have the capacity, we have the antenna, but still no frequency. Right, so that's unfortunate, and we know it's political, but we really want the authorities to know this is not Bensouda radio, this is KMC radio.
Right.
And basically I'm going to leave, and what we want is for this to be part of our legacy. We want definitely to leave a frequency. We want our personnel to be highly motivated. And this is a free resource for even government, right? So if you have been following this 1 year of content, I guarantee you have not seen any political content on it. And I have a mayor's hour every 3 months, 1 hour every 3 months. And it's all about what KMC is up to. So it is truly, in spirit, a community radio. And I see no reason why the license would be withheld.
Interesting.
I hope... I mean, those responsible
are
watching.
I've heard your plea.
It's a community-based thing, and when it's community, it benefits everybody. Yeah, so thank you very much, Mayor, for coming.
Thank you.
And we hope to visit you in your office. Maybe our next program will be there.
You're more than welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Ade.
Mayor, thank you, and I will keep on pushing you about these street names. But
I love that. I love that. And we are launching a project very soon, sponsored by the French Development Agency, being implemented by the University of Essex, where we are actually now taking the GIS a notch further.
Okay.
And when the time comes, we'll invite you guys to come witness it.
Yeah.
We'll be there.
So we are more than happy to have the mayor here, and you know, it's the first mayor to come on.
Oh,
really? I feel honored.
This morning.
Well, you probably
Yeah.
said,
So
you said about other mayors will want to come on now.
Thank you,
all
guys.
right.
Appreciate
So
it.
viewers, this is all we have for you until we come here again tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of our programs. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.